After all we've been through. Everything that I've done. It can't be for nothing.
So, I thought I would start off my video essay journey with one of the least controversial, divisive, and quite frankly peaceful games to be released in the past decade.
Please don't shoot. Joel, please get up.
The original Last of Us is quite possibly my favourite game of all time, and it's battling a few games for my number one spot, including Silent Hill 2, the original, Cyberpunk, Bioshock and Soma to name a few, but I really had never connected that way to characters before, and experiencing the highs and lows of that journey with Joel and Ellie, and seeing Joel slowly bring his guard down to love Ellie after his daughter died, in possibly the most traumatic opening segment to any game ever. Ellie truly was his world, and so in the question of saving Ellie or saving the world from the infection, Joel did save the world. He saved his world. One of my most vivid gaming memories is mowing down those doctors, surgeons, nurses and hospital staff at the end of the game to save Ellie. As far as I'm concerned, I was Joel and my surrogate daughter was about to be killed, and I would have killed anything in my way. And I think the absolute amazing thing about this is people unanimously agree, and most people totally understand and agree with Joel's decision, despite the fact it was incredibly morally dubious and just a morally grey ending in general. And I think it asked questions that probably didn't need answering too. The Last of Us didn't need a sequel, but also it's not like it couldn't have had one. You know, we had some key questions at the end, such as, does Ellie believe Joel? How will their lie affect their relationship? And will her immunity mean anything down the road? But again, some of these questions are probably best left to people's interpretations, and I kind of would agree with that. This essay will really touch on the graphics, gameplay and mechanics of the game, and will pretty much solely focus on the themes and my reflections of these. Rest assured, I think the graphics and mechanics are still some of the best on the market to date, only to be potentially rivaled by Horizon Forbidden West, which is an absolutely beautiful game. Ellie's arc always gets brandished as a revenge quest to make Abby suffer for what she did to Joel and out of the anger and spite towards her. However, I feel that Ellie's revenge quest was not motivated by her hatred of Abby, but rather her hatred for herself for not forgiving Joel sooner. She regrets pushing him away, and her journey is one of self-reflection and coming to terms with her grief as opposed to a personal attack on Abby and her life. I think the final flashback scene with Joel and Ellie sums this up perfectly, where we see that only the night before he was killed, she said that she would try to forgive him, and obviously this opportunity was snatched away from her. She is projecting her deep-rooted hatred of herself onto Abby, and this explains the complete fixation on enacting revenge that never truly satisfies her, because she cannot shake her own guilt and misery for her own actions. As an extra mention, my favourite line in the entire game is in this scene, a line that perfectly sums up Joel's beautiful stubbornness and his never-ending love for Ellie, re-emphasising the immersive, realistic human portrayals. It also further explains why Ellie feels so guilty, as Joel has only ever shown love to her, and even despite her hatred for him in the past year, he would save her life again and again and again.
If somehow the Lord gave me a second chance at that moment, I would do it all over again.
After Ellie's showdown with Abby in the theatre, she has now settled down with Dina and JJ in the farm, and still has very severe PTSD that she just can't seem to shake. She's slowly coming to the realisation that she just cannot continue the way things were, as she will continue to hurt the people she cares about most. During the nightmare Ellie has in the barn, she hears the words "Ellie, help me" coming from Joel, which is something that Joel never originally said. This is so interesting and shows the way she interprets that moment. It's that she failed to save him. You know, she isn't picturing Abby in the scene with the golf club in hand. Like, Abby isn't in this flashback at all. It's just her and Joel. This further confirms my thoughts that this is a journey of oneself, as opposed to a journey about Abby and her hatred of Abby. Moreover, after Ellie kills Nora at the end of Seattle Day 2, we see the weight of the violence at her hands, and I mean her hands are literally shaking in this scene. And this is not something we see with Abby at all, and we'll be getting to this. This scene shows Ellie is really struggling with the mindless violence, and the journey is starting to really get to her and break her down. She is not like Joel or Abby, of which I think Abby almost gets a kick out of the violence. It hurts Ellie, and she loses herself the deeper we go into the story. Therefore, she isn't doing this and going through this kind of revenge violence quest because she wants to. She is trying to find the peace and resolution and struggling because the peace is not to be found in the violence. And the more she channels this anger at Abby, Nora, Owen and the entire WLF, the more hurt she feels and the more lost she feels in herself and in the story. I also think that Ellie's lack of ability to let go comes from her feeling powerless, which is further supported by the infamous PS Vita girl scene. Her opportunity to forgive was taken away from her, ripped away from her, and she hasn't been able to regain control within herself. She's killing almost to make her feel that control again, which is another reason why she continues with the revenge cycle. Again, this is a personal reason, and not out of hatred for Abby, backing up my earlier points. I love Dina, she is one of my favourite characters ever. However, she completely enables Ellie's behaviour and helps her basically slowly lose herself. Dina doesn't question Ellie, she just follows her almost blindly and lets Ellie take her in any direction, and she doesn't make Ellie reflect at all. Again, just helps her basically just take the lead. Despite Dina knowing she's almost certainly pregnant, she claims she doesn't want to be a burden. That's one of the reasons she didn't say anything. But again, she isn't thinking rationally. Everyone in this game is thinking emotionally, which is one of the reasons for Ellie spiralling. Ellie needs to be checked, and she needs the people around her taking the lead as opposed to her. The lack of guidance from her friends and from the characters in general, apart from Jessie, is another reason Ellie has to lose everything to find some element of closure of what has happened. It's one of the reasons she's never able to fully come to terms with Joel's death till the end of the game. To summarise, this journey is Ellie's process of grieving and learning to forgive herself for her resentment to Joel. And it's the process of this game and this game's story that helps her do this, not Abby herself. By the end, as we'll be coming on to, Ellie losing her fingers in that final showdown with Abby, and the fact that she can't play guitar anymore means she's truly now lost everything with her connection to Joel, and now only at complete rock bottom can she begin to rebuild her life. Just a little FYI, I'm recording all of these parts out of order, so this is actually the last thing I'm recording for this video essay, so I'm getting very delirious, but let's continue. So, understanding Abby's perspective and growing to appreciate her as a character either works for you or it doesn't, and if it does, please let me know. It'd be a lovely change of pace. Please just send me in just anything, just saying something nice about her, thanks. I'm not going to say anything new or interesting in this segment that hasn't been said before, but just to reiterate, here are my thoughts about Abby's perspective. So we find out that her dad dies at the hands of Joel, and her dad was the surgeon at the end of the first game. So when Joel goes on his murder rampage in the hospital to save Ellie, yeah, that's her dad, and she sees his corpse as a stark reminder of what we did in chapter 1. So this is why she kills Joel. We find out that basically from her perspective, Joel's the worst human being imaginable. He killed her dad, and he sacrificed the hope of humanity, and he was kind of a jackass. Then we get a bunch of these Owen and Abby romance scenes, and we go through their romance and how it's developed and how it's changed. I don't care. I don't care about any of these scenes. I don't get what the point was. It's humanising Abby further, but I don't think this does anything, and I just don't like these scenes. I love Owen, okay? I think he's actually the only redeemable character in that whole group. But yeah, I'm not into these scenes. However, I massively care about the Abby and Lev relationship. These segments are my favourite in the entire game, and from a gameplay perspective, which I said I wouldn't really touch on that much, but Abby has by far the best segments. The farmland section, the infected nest section, the Rat King bit, the woodlands part, I love her segments so much. Abby and Lev were kind of designed to mirror Ellie and Joel's journey as well. I think people have commented on this. I think it's meant to be quite a subconscious thing, but a consideration for Lev is just so beautiful, and just seeing Abby's whole redemption arc. So Ellie starts off in a great spot and then goes downhill. Whereas Abby does the opposite. She starts off at the worst and then begins her redemption arc. So that parallel, there's so many parallels going on here, and I think it's beautiful to see her right at the end of the game here, to protecting and left with her life, a kid that she was been told and sworn to, well, not the kid herself, but obviously the scars in general, and I think it's just, yeah, it reinforces this empathy angle so much with everything kind of that happens in the game. This is my favourite of Abby's lines in the game, and really goes to show this redemption arc in full swing.
My people. Listen to me. We're gonna have to fight to get out of this, okay? And then I need you to show us to those boats. We don't let anybody stop us. Yeah? Okay.
In conclusion, using Abby as a tool to explore empathy, I think, is masterfully done. I don't love Abby, and I definitely grew on her. I couldn't have gone the opposite way and hated her more. But I really don't think Naughty Dog are trying to make you love Abby at all. I don't think that's important to them or the story. I think just appreciating her journey and understanding that to her, Joel was enemy number one, and all of the pain that he caused, and understanding the ramifications of Joel's actions is a huge part of what they wanted to portray with this game, and using Abby to do this, I think, was fantastic, and I think incredibly engaging, especially, like I said, with that relationship with Lev that kind of builds. Perspective's a beautiful thing, huh? Thank you to Abby for teaching us this. You might love this game, you might hate this game, but I tell you what, you certainly won't be saying to yourself after playing this, man, I wish they took more risks and were just a little bit bold, that would have been great. In the wake of remake culture, with homogenized game design, art style, and just a culture of microtransactions, poorly thought out cash grabbing tactics and safe game design, for Naughty Dog to, number 1, kill their beloved character within the first 2 hours of the game, number 2, make you play as said killer for half the game, and number 3, make you try and kill Ellie with said character. Like, I can't even believe the things I'm saying. This takes guts, and you have to admire the bravery and conviction for a studio to do this after developing such a culture of passion and enthusiasm for their characters and for the environments and worlds that they've built up.
Take it easy. Just take it easy. God damn.
I remain to this day one of the very few sympathisers to this scene and Joel's death in general. How could you say that, Cal? I love Joel. I will pictures him on my wall. He's the best thing ever do. I get it, and I love Joel just as much as you. I love the fact he's a very complex character. I love the way he loves and cares so much about the people that are close to him. I love the fact he's a real character, and we can all empathise and understand his position and perspective. I love Joel, and I was basically traumatised after coming across this death scene, trust me. But I still see the value in this scene, and I have less of an issue with the brutality of it. A lot of people have an issue with the brutality of this death, but I would say that, well, yeah, it was brutal, but Joel did not deserve a hero's death. Joel isn't a hero. This is basically screamed to us through both of the games. He's just a man trying to survive in this world, and there's a great quote in the first game just after the petrol station shootout scene where Ellie asks Joel, how did you know they were going to jump us? And he goes, because I've been on both sides. That proves that this world, it's just about survivors, and I think that was just such a big part of this scene. It was proving that, no, Joel is not going to get that hero death that you want. He's going to get a death that is very accustomed to this world. The way people die in this world and the way people die in real life, they just die. And there's no kind of big ceremony about it. It just happens. And I think that is basically spot on to the world and spot on to the narrative that they're trying to get across. The fact that Naughty Dog were able to kill their fan favourite characters so brutally to fill this exploration into grief and ultimately the cost of love is admirable, and this is what we need in the AAA space right now. Name me another studio that's done something so ballsy, and before you type in, oh, there's a reason for that, well, no, there isn't. Like, I don't want to play the same old predictable Marvel inspired tied up with a bow stories. I want to be challenged by my narratives and narratives that I experience. Good job, Naughty Dog. Also notice how Joel never pushed for an answer when he was asking, who are you people? Because he kind of knew his time was up. Like, he knew that one day his decisions would catch up to him. He says basically that. He says, finish your speech and let's get this over with. He's been prepared. He's been waiting. He is prepared for this situation before in his head, and it's finally come and he's ready. And I think that's a really, really amazing. That is so on the nose and in the character of Joel. This links in perfectly with another key criticism the game gets, which is around the consistency of the character portrayal, particularly with Joel and Tommy in Joel's death scene and also the clip you're seeing on screen, when Tommy is trying to convince Ellie to go after Abby and put herself back in harm's way. People say Joel would never ever say his name openly to a room full of strangers, as he's a very cautious survivor and famously to trust everyone he meets. However, he's just been in a safe, secure environment in Jackson for years and is bound to have let his guard down apart from the time he was a survivor, as he probably had very few issues in that time other than keeping himself alive from the infected, which is kind of a big deal. Cal from the past. Do you not remember that? Basically, the point I'm making is he isn't the man he once was because he doesn't have to be anymore. This is very, very similar with the Tommy situation that we're seeing on screen here. People would say that why would he try and put Ellie back into that trauma and back into that danger, especially after it was actually his decision to end the search for Abby and spare Abby before the final showdown in the theatre. Again, what people fail to recognise here and fail to interpret is the context and the time gaps. He said that before he was shot in the head at point blank range, before he lost his eye, before he loses control of his left leg, and before his marriage falls apart, and before he had months to grow bitter around the pain that's been caused to him and his family. We shouldn't need all these extra clues spoon-fed to us. It's clear that with what happened to him, he could have easily gone back on that word and felt vengeful again at this never-ending cycle of violence that keeps causing more pain, suffering and death as we continue through the game. And also, people act out of character anyway. Like, I act super out of character when I'm angry. I'm sure you do too. This game is reflecting life, and that's why it's more authentic as a result, because it's not going by a typical story structure. It's just, things are just happening, which is also how life is. So I think that's also not an issue. I think that is one of the reasons the game comes across as so authentic in that sense. Okay, so I know I've been quite an advocate for this game so far, and I've stood up for it, and I've battled some criticism from my perspective, but I do remember this moment quite vividly, and I think this is even potentially where I draw the line. So this segment is unhinged. There are countless videos on YouTube of players letting Abby die continuously and repeatedly, as they were just basically just not having this segment at all, and I do kind of get why. I include the scene because I wanted to give an example of where I think they take it a little bit too far. So the whole segment's about how much I love and appreciate the bravery on display, but you can take it slightly too far, and to expect the audience to be able to get behind this scene I think was one step too far. But hey, I'm not biased. After laying down all that fantastic groundwork with Abby, for her to then go and say this is just, yeah, it's not great for the cause.
She's pregnant. Good. Abby.
I am so proud of Naughty Dog for making such bold, brave narrative decisions that they purposefully knew would not resonate with everyone. Neil Druckmann famously said in an interview pre-launch that they knew there would be fans of the first game who don't like this game. When you make a game because you want to tell a story and expand your world, like in this case, and not because, oh, the first one sold well, so now we've got to think of another story, the media feels so much more purposeful like this as a result. They made the story they wanted to make without a care of who or if it would resonate, and if you want to be part of that journey, then great, but if not, then this game wasn't made for you anyway. It also says so much about the trusting relationship between Sony and Naughty Dog, as for Sony to allow them to make these kind of bold narrative decisions, like obviously the first game sold really well and obviously that helped, but they obviously have this very trusting relationship between the publisher and the developer. We learned from Silent Hill 2 Remake that some of these marketing campaigns are completely controlled by the publisher, and Konami basically instructed Bloober to make a combat trailer against their wishes. So we need more cooperation between developers and publishers, and a trusting culture supporting bold decisions. You're going to have to bear with me for this section as I explain my extremely convoluted point in the most convoluted way possible. The point I want to get at really is, do you need to enjoy a video game to appreciate the experience it gives you? You know, media that makes you feel sad and stressed, you know, is that a bad thing? Especially now if we're spending now £50-60 on a new video game. We want to feel good about it, right? We want to have actually enjoyed the experience. Or do we just want to go through an experience that will stay with us for a long time? Most of the game is about violence, death, misery. In fact, I don't even think Ellie has one happy moment of respite other than in the very first act, well, Seattle Day 1, which is also a skippable moment, might I add, and is one of my absolute favourite parts of the entire game.
I don't know what I'm to say, I'll say it anyway. Today's another day to find you shying away.
Here I wanted to draw a parallel with one of my favourite games ever, a game that I couldn't get into for the life of me on my first try, and it took some real perseverance but is now one of my all-time favourites. In this game, you're supposed to feel the wear and tear of Sam's journey throughout the game. Feeling these feelings of tiredness, fatigue, loneliness and disconnection is exactly the feelings that the game wants you to feel. That's why you go through long stretches of the game without speaking to anybody, going through the snow, through all of this kind of extreme terrain, feeling lonely, feeling bored, feeling disconnected, because these seemingly bad emotions that you technically wouldn't want to experience, they don't make you feel happy to experience, but they help you empathise and feel connected to the story and journey. And one thing I know for sure is that people are connecting to this story. This is probably like the 500th millionth video essay on this topic at this point, so yeah, they're definitely doing something right. A lot of players want Ellie to kill Abby at this point, right at the end, and I didn't. I was so emotionally destroyed at this point in the story that I didn't know what to think. I was just being strung along at that point. But yeah, Ellie learned her lesson about the cycle of violence. You know, she had that flashback to Joel, and I really don't think killing Abby would have made this story any more satisfying. I think it would have been less satisfying, and it would have gone against the entire point of the whole game. This is the thing I can't wrap my head around with this criticism. Like, Abby is not a plot device for Ellie. She is her own character with her own desires, and ultimately it links back into the Ellie and Joel story and understanding that fractured relationship, but she has her own character, so it would have made just so little sense and so little point for her to have been killed just for Ellie's development when we've played as half the game as her. She's just as much a part of this story as anyone at this point. And talk about foreshadowing. In the first game, Ellie says to Sam, my biggest fear is winding up alone, and that is exactly what happens. I was so angry at Ellie for leaving her adopted child, for leaving her girlfriend to go back on this pointless revenge quest. I was thinking, have you not learned from everything that's happened? This is just causing more pain and more problems and suffering. It's not helping her. She thinks she can get rid of her grief by going out and killing Abby and leaving the people that have been by her side. You know how much I love Dina. It just didn't make any sense to me, but I wasn't thinking about her survivor's guilt. I wasn't thinking about the PTSD that she experienced watching her basically adopted dad, surrogate dad, like we said earlier, killed in front of her in the most brutal fashion. And everything that she'd been through. She's not like Abby. She's not a killer. Ellie isn't a killer. She really struggles with the concept of killing and murder, as we saw when she killed Nora. And this scene is her frantically looking for the last thing she thinks can bring her peace, and that's by finishing off Abby. This game isn't really about revenge, it's not about violence, it's about dealing with grief. I think that's it. If we could say a phrase on it, it's dealing with grief. And Ellie is trying to figure out how to deal with her grief. And unfortunately, it costs her everything.
Hey, stop. Hey, come on. We've got a family. She doesn't get to be more important than that. No.
I have just analysed a variety of scenes throughout the game that I did not enjoy playing, that made me feel stressed, anxious, angry. Why would I want to feel those feelings? Well, I don't know. But what I can say is feeling those feelings is the reason the game still plays in repeat in my head 4 years after its launch. The ending is so bitter, and as I finished it, I just thought to myself, what was the point in all of that? But I value the fact that this game was an experience. It might not have been an enjoyable experience in many parts, but it was an experience and one that I will never forget. You may hate the game, you may love the game, or you may feel conflicted like me, but the one thing I know is that you feel something about this game, and it's made you care and feel things. And isn't that the reason why we play games? To feel something, to connect to these characters, and experience a moment in time. The Last of Us Part 2 is intentionally messy, emotionally complicated and morally grey, and yet so many people just refuse or don't want to understand Abby's perspective, and that's okay. The Last of Us Part 2 is a gut-wrenching experience that makes you feel bad purposefully, and usually games are obsessed with working and stroking the player's ego and making them feel powerful and in control, and this narrative slowly starts to shift with games like Outlast and survival horror in general, where it's actually part of the mechanics of the game to feel like the underdog, to feel like the outcast, and feel like the person who's probably not going to make it out alive. This game is complex, and to those it didn't resonate with, it wasn't made for them. You know, this game is truly so on brand with The Last of Us themes and lore. Most of us just can't empathise and put ourselves into the shoes of another character and understand the decisions they would make. This is one of humanity's biggest struggles, empathy, so it makes total sense, and I'm so glad that a game was created to tackle empathy and to tackle us going through grief and understanding the grief process and how we all grieve so differently. Like, what an amazing thing and theme to base a game off. You know, this game is so important, and I'm so glad it exists to make us look inwards at the things that are most important to all of us. So was it for nothing after all? Ellie lost everything: her adopted son, her girlfriend, her community, her dad, and herself along the way. The game is asking you a question. Like Ellie began to forgive Joel, can you forgive Abby for what she did to your favourite character? The fact there's been so many video essays, so much hate, so much love, so much discussion shows they have done something of note, and they were very brave, and hell, some of it I don't think worked, but I will take that every day over a game company that does nothing. This quote sums it up perfectly. The simple fact that this game generated a debate that lasts to this day and continues to change people's perspectives is more than enough to know that it is much more than a common video game.
After all we've
That is it. That is why I love this game. That is why I respect this game and always will. Tommy left Ellie originally because Joel's death couldn't be in vain. His sacrifice and everything he did for Ellie couldn't be in vain, and it couldn't be for nothing. What I failed to realise is it's not just about Ellie and Joel. This story is about us. What I thought to myself when I finished the game, you know, what was the point of the game? And I couldn't understand that it was myself. It was my experiences. It was what I had learned. And it's about focusing that the point is me. The point is what I had got from this game. This game isn't just a story. It helps us reflect and become better people. So no, it can't be for nothing, and it isn't for nothing. It was for us.